Listen very carefully and follow my instructions. Prepare your brain for the Cortex Labs Nootropics podcast.
I mean, look, being an entrepreneur, I would not go through the rest of my life without taking nootropics. Aniracetam, piracetam, oxiracetam, uridine monophosphate, CDP-choline, modafinil, Noopept, forget it. You can always have a better brain.
The Cortex Nootropics podcast is about to begin.
Episode number 28 of the Cortex Labs Nootropics podcast. This is going to be a validative podcast because we're going to really validate the use of nootropics for really improving something that cerebral brain output wise or mental functioning wise that you've had a problem with in the past, but that the particular smart drug or nootropic in question improves for you. And it's going to be anecdotal. I'm going to basically explain my story on how I was pretty terrible at reading comprehension all of my life. I did terrible in school. I don't like to learn that way. And how Noopept particularly basically changed that. I know that sounds a little hyperbolic, but it's not. If you look at the mechanisms, if you take it for long enough, if you take it acutely, for most folks, they're going to recognize the memory benefit from it. And my experiences, with it were profound, and I want to share that with you guys today. But 4 major powerful nootropic product discussion elements. I feel like I drug that out a little bit. To discuss, number 1, the Cortex Nootropic Stack. That's our stack. It is killing it out there in the market. It's a very powerful stack. We created a stack that basically I wanted to mimic modafinil with. Now, before we actually published this commercial stack, Cortex, this was a stack that I was using to run a company just about 18 hours a day, right? To have good brain performance doing so. And the intention, by the way, was doing that. But we actually had the intention of creating something I had the intention of creating something that was similar to modafinil before I even thought to make that a commercial stack. But then I got the bug to create the commercial stack out of it because it was so powerful. I was giving it to other entrepreneur friends of mine who were running companies all day, and they were like, dude, started relying on it. It was like, okay, we know we're onto something very powerful here. So we turned that into a stack. It's called Cortex. Get it at livecortex.com. We wrote 2 digital guides. These are downloadable books, basically, but they're mostly stack-ridden, nootropic stack-ridden. They've just got a bunch of powerful stacks in there. One of them's on a generally encompasses everything related to nootropics. We got modafinil, we've got tranquility nootropics in there, theanine, modafinil, theanine, caffeine protocols, aniracetam protocols, oxiracetam strategies. We've got uridine, the Mr. Happy stack, uridine ALA strategies, alcar racetam strategies, alcar oxiracetam strategies. Very powerful guide. That is called the Smarter, Better, Faster guide. The tagline is a surgical guide to using nootropics for total mental dominance. So that means that's my guide after 8.5 years of taking nootropics on how to use them properly and how to use them most effectively. I mean, literally to get very specific brain states with very particular stacks. It's stack ridden. Lots of powerful stacks in there. Get that at livecortex.com. And then also, we wrote one strictly on racetams, which has 80 plus racetam stacks in it. We're talking about sublingual phenylpiracetam, Noopept stacks. We're talking about everything under the sun, phenylpiracetam, tyrosine, Noopept, vinpocetine stacks. Very, very powerful stacks. We even break down fasoracetam. We call it the anxiolytic but full brain enhancement racetam. It's called the Racetam God Guide. It explains all the 8 nootropic racetams and a bunch of different stacks with those racetams. You will leave reading that guide knowing what you need to know about racetams, where to get racetams, how to take racetams, what to stack them with. It's basically a God Guide. That's what we call the Racetam God Guide on racetams. And then lastly, look, we're doing a lot of this lately. Stack consulting. We got folks that are hitting us up that are masseuses, that are doctors, that are there's one guy who's a neurologist, that are nurses, that are accountants, and they just started taking nootropics, or they're looking to get into nootropics, or they've been in for 5 years, and they need advice, basically stack optimization on their stack. Like their stack's not perfect, they want to make it better, or they want to develop a good stack that they can take every day that'll help them to push through like the last 6 months of school, or the last 2 years of school, or final exams coming up. Anyway, it's basically a consulting slash stack advice, stack critique, stack optimization. It's 40 minutes on a call with me, either audio or video chat on Skype, whatever you want to do. We can even talk on the phone. It's up to you. And then 15 additional email correspondences thereafter to get your thing perfect. We never really stick to the 40 minutes. It's always like an hour and 10 minutes, and that's totally okay. And that's because I love talking about nootropics, and I can help you get your stack great. Get that stuff at livecortex.com. All right, so by the way, I also want to mention the digital guides, the Racetam God Guide and Smarter, Better, Faster, those are going to be on audio soon. We're working on it, okay? But you can get the guides right now at livecortex.com. They are powerful. All right, so look, Noopept works on cholinergic signaling as far as anyone can tell, probably sensitizing acetylcholine receptors, kind of like some of the Racetams. But one of the things that it demonstratively does is increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor and nerve growth factor in both the cerebral cortex and in the hippocampus. I'm quite sure in the hippocampus that comes as a result of more chronic use, and the BDNF and NGF increases in the cerebral cortex are with more acute use, but still very impressive nonetheless. Noopept is actually one of my favorite nootropics. It made it on my top 12 list of a video that we did on YouTube about my top 12 nootropics after 8.5 years. It's powerful. It's a Russian pharmaceutical nootropic, but it's legal to have in the United States. As far as I can tell, it's legal to import and have in Canada, right? So it's not scheduled. The UK, we always have to say this, the UK is very shifty and they're getting uber fascist and they're getting very strange. So they've got restrictions on particular nootropics under the psychoactive, the Psychoactive Compounds Act or whatever that new law is, which is quite restrictive and limiting and treats their citizens like they're 8-year-olds. But so you might want to look at whether or not Noopept is purchasable or legal to have in the United Kingdom. But most other places it is. That's essentially the deal with Noopept. The dose range is anywhere from 5 to 30 milligrams. Most folks find a good solid sweet spot between 8 and 15 milligrams. Some people that might have significant brain atrophy, significant cholinergic atrophy, otherwise malfunctions in their the way their neurons and hippocampus and otherwise regions of the brain fire, it might need to take upwards of 30 milligrams of Noopept. I know a few 50 to 60-year-olds that their sweet spot's 25 milligrams of Noopept, and it just totally turns their brains on and puts them in a good solid place. And so that is essentially the basis for Noopept. My sweet spot's 13 to 15 milligrams. I'll either take it in oral form or 1 to 1.5 nasal sprays. Noopept nasal spray. By the way, you do a half nasal spray by just pushing very, very slightly on the nozzle. And 1 is normally good enough for me. And that's essentially it. But the applicability of Noopept, I always call it the working memory. It's like the working memory nootropic. That Huperzine PRL 853, not stacked together, but those are sort of the best in my experience and in my opinion. Besides perhaps triacetyluridine on its own in 50 milligram quantities. So let me just take you back to my time in school. First of all, I was expelled from high school in 10th grade. I never went back. I tried homeschooling, didn't work. I just didn't like it. I then got emancipated at 17, got a GED shortly thereafter, and joined the United States military. Okay, my time in formal education was really pretty terrible. I not only did bad, it was hard for me to get A's and B's. Like I was a C and D student throughout my entire time in school, and F. I mean, I failed some classes. But primarily, not because I have a learning disability or something, but primarily I just wasn't willing to accept that I had to modulate my way of accepting information for a terribly unintuitive, curriculum delivering strategy, which is the modern current formal education system. I'm not it's like a bunch of unintuitive people got together and said, this is how we should present information. This is how students should learn information. It's not that it's for the mechanically oriented, people that have engineering brains and they're better suited for it, and therefore you should be too. It's not even close. It doesn't mean it's the right way to teach either in formal education, because some people can learn that way. It's in reality a terribly unintuitive, a non-creative way to teach people information. So anyway, I was always very just terrible at it, because I don't like to, I'm one of those practical people, right? It's, we're in backwards world where people think that's practical, formal education practical. That's not practical at all. I'm very practical, meaning I understand humans are kinesthetic people. We're kinesthetic learners, most of us. We want to learn through video and stuff that's interactive. We want to hear things. We want to touch it. We want to be interacting with it. I learn best by being on the street. I have been on the street meaning engaging with the world, my entire life. That's how I learn information, and that's how I think most people really are able to synthesize information, consolidate it, compartmentalize it, really truly understand what the heck is going on in some situation or another. So I did terrible in school. And one of the major things that plagued me was reading comprehension. I would read 3-4 pages in a book. I could read fine and fast. I'm a great reader, I write great. But I just wouldn't really remember what the heck I just read. Like I couldn't see, and if I did, I couldn't put it together. I just had a hard time putting it together, But if somebody creative and intuitive got up and took the book that we were reading in this hypothetical situation and said, yeah, well, Johnny went to the thing and here's what happened here and and explained some of the stuff, and then maybe extrapolated some important, concise facts about it, tried to construct a story about it, then I would understand it. And I got to talk with that person who was teaching, we interacted, then I would walk away and understand it, right? Because that's how most folks are better inclined to learn. So I just had a terrible time with it. Anyway, after I, basically got emancipated, joined the United States military, I got out, became an entrepreneur, so I never really had to deal with hardcore reading comprehension until I started getting interested in brain performance, which was just a year or so after I got out of the Army. And then, reading about meditation and trying to understand neuroscience and these sorts of things. This is right when I started taking nootropics. In the beginning, it was paracetam that helped a lot. But once I started getting into Noopept, I basically my entire experience in reading comprehension changed. Basically, that injury that I had, that impairment where I really couldn't understand what I was reading, and I had a hard time digesting information and put it all together if it was in that format, went away. And I mean, literally within my first couple doses of taking Noopept. Okay, so let me just bring you to a very particular situation in which I was reading a scientific study. This is about meditation, because in my early years, which basically was the catalyst for me getting into nootropics, it was meditation first. That was like the thing that changed my whole brain. And so, I just became obsessed with it and started reading everything I could find about meditation. And then, in that time period, I got into taking nootropics, and I got my hands on some Noopept. And there was this one standout particular, time where I was trying to understand the effect on meditation, the effect meditation has on gray matter in the brain, trying to understand what gray matter is, how meditation affects it, how that contributes to people's longevity in good, solid, functioning cognitive states, and prevents neurodegeneration and these sorts of things. I was also trying to understand glial cells, these sort of supporting cells in the brain. And there was this big, long, study on it, this big, long read. And I was like, this Noopept compound, it had helped me to feel like I could read more information and digest more information, prior. I just started taking it. Let me take Noopept and read this freaking study. So I took the Noopept. Back then I used to require a lot more choline when I take cholinergic style nootropics than I do now. So it took 300 or 500 milligrams of choline by tartrate. And then, my dose was 15 milligrams of Noopept. So yeah, I took the dose 20 or 30 minutes, 15 minutes, I was like, wow, I started to notice this a little stimulated. My brain just felt better and different, a lot more clear, a lot sharper. And then I sat down to read this study. I read the whole thing. It was a 10-page study. I read the entire thing quick. I mean, it must have been 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe less. But as I was reading it, I got into this crazy flow state because I was understanding everything I was reading. Everything. And not only was I understanding it and putting the pieces together and remembering what I read on the previous page and connecting it to the new page, but I was remembering it all. I was remembering it all. And I left that study. That was one of the hallmark studies. It was significantly important, significant study for me in understanding meditation, glial cells, gray matter in the brain, a few other things relating to meditation. And that was, look, I'm trying not to be hyperbolic, but that literally was a life-changing experience for me, because I had always been terrible at comprehending information in readable form. I was always just really bad at it. And 15 milligrams of Noopept, and literally the problem went away. And I was great at it, and I was incredible at it. So thereafter, it's like these days it's funny, jumping to now 2017, September basically 2017, I don't have those issues even when I don't take nootropics. And this is obviously anecdotal, but I mean, when I don't take nootropics and I just drink coffee and sleep well and exercise and eat well, I don't have working memory deficits and or reading comprehension impairments anymore. What do I attribute it to? Like, I'm just going to say it. It's taking nootropics for 8.5 years. That's it. Taking cholinergics, taking racetams, taking memory-enhancing nootropics, taking Noopept. That's what I think it is. Seems pretty clear to me. Can I quantify it, or can we study my brain? Like, yeah, no, we're not going to be able to. But that's what I think. I was never good at doing it in my entire life. I started taking nootropics, particularly Noopept, and then the entire thing changed. And even now, these days, on my baseline, without nootropics, I have a better reading comprehension. Now, taking nootropics like PRL 853 and or Noopept and or huperzine A and or aniracetam and or triacetyluridine certainly does enhance my working memory and reading comprehension over baseline, but I believe nootropics optimize me long term, which is the topic of an entirely different podcast. Because look, that happens. You take nootropics for long enough, you take the right nootropics, not even for significantly long, maybe even a year, you can improve brain function that I believe, this is anecdotal, I have no proof of this, long-term over time. And if you look, the optimization of neurotransmitter receptor sites via compounds that are proven to go and optimize them, like increasing density of acetylcholine or dopamine, it's not far-fetched to think that would improve brain function over time. The real question is, when does that receptor modification go back to normal, right? That's a whole nother, rabbit hole to go down. But that's essentially it, guys. Okay? That's the anecdotal report. That's the story. I was terrible at reading comprehension my entire life. I just could not synthesize any of it. My working memory was pretty poor. I didn't want to learn that way. It's funny because I could learn that way if someone were to talk to me about it and we could interact, and or if it was audio or video. Right? I'm a kinesthetic learner. I like learning that way. Most people do, really. But the moment I started taking Noopept, all of that changed. And there was a very particular instance in which I was reading a long study on meditation and gray matter and basically long-term effects of meditation, neurological effects of meditation, that I actually understood and that I could actually synthesize. And that every bit of the details of that paper I remembered. And I put it all together. And I walked away from it remembering. It's not like I was just remembering it there. I walked away from it. That is my story on Noopept. That is my anecdotal report on taking Noopept and having it really, really drastically improve my working memory and comprehension. To this day, my regular baseline without taking nootropics is improved in terms of reading comprehension and working memory. But I still take Noopept, especially when I'm going to go read a whole lot of stuff. I'll take either Noopept, PRL 853, or huperzine A, and in other cases, triacetyluridine or aniracetam. Okay? So, man, look, everybody's looking for validation with their nootropics, right? Why should I take them, right? Do they really improve brain function over time? Where's the scientific studies? There's a lot that's going to be anecdotal. And allow this podcast, in my experience, to be a good, solid anecdotal validation of the use of nootropics for particular brain-related tasks, the use of nootropics to improve something you were weak in cognitively prior, and just the general notion of taking nootropics to improve brain performance. Noopept is a powerful compound. It's one of my favorites, made it in my top 12, relatively safe to take long term. Should be cycled, absolutely should be cycled like everything else. And look, I hope you enjoyed the story. Rock on. Thanks so much for listening. And hey, for powerful nootropic products, head over to livecortex.com. We've got the Cortex Stack. That thing is extremely powerful. By the way, that combines uridine, CDP choline, artichoke extract, and the ages-old powerful nootropic Bacopa monnieri for a synergistic mental energy, speed of processing, and motivation experience. Get that at livecortex.com. That is the Cortex Stack. Number 2, we wrote 2 guides. Both of them are digital. You can get them right away. You can download them. The moment you get them, you can download them. You can download for any device you have. Read them on iPad, iPhone, Kindle, Android, whatever you got. PDF, whatever, Android, tablet, whatever you got. One of them's on racetams. It's called the Racetam God Guide. Get access to 80-plus stacks and instructions on all the racetams. And then there's Smarter, Better, Faster, which is an all-encompassing nootropics instructional protocol guide, which also has a whole bunch of stacks, lots of instructions, lots of protocols. I mean, basically, like if you're new to nootropics and you need a guide that tells you everything you need to know about it, get Smarter, Better, Faster. You get the Ras guide too, but Smarter, Better, Faster is really the place to start. But even if you're 5 years in, there's massive distinctions in there. My philosophy is infused into it. There's stacks I've never talked about before in there. Very powerful stuff. And if you need nootropics consults to improve your stack, 40 minutes with me, 15 additional email correspondences, get all that stuff at livecortex.com. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We will talk to you next time. Check us out on YouTube if you're not listening to this on YouTube, the Cortex Labs, Nootropics, and Smart Drugs channel. On the web at livecortex.com, on our blog at livecortex.com/blog, and wherever the heck else you can find us. Rock on. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.